Hello, I'm back again. We're a guest appearance, and we're going to be talking today about the food situation in the group and the various stages of it, and when I took over and how we dealt with all of that. When I was very spoiled and grew up in a household with a mom that, well, I'm six of seven children on my mother's side, seven, eight on my father's. And my mother was rather tired of cooking by the time I came along, but she still could make anything fabulous. And so I never went hungry. I always had something I liked to eat, and then I made the decision at 15 to move to the Herring House to be near David. And that's my first acquaintance with being truly hungry. We had an older woman that did the cooking, very nice woman, not a good cook. And she was used to doing things very inexpensively. And she took her job of saving everyone money very seriously, and so as a consequence we ate a lot of I'll give you an example of one of the common things we ate every day. Was our dinner was a piece of bread, which was some kind of whole wheat inexpensive bread. We would have a hint of peanut butter or a hint of cream cheese on it, and when I say a hint, it was more that you could smell it than you could see it or taste it. And we had Red Delicious apples. I've never purposely eaten another Red Delicious apple again in my life after this. David was so hungry. We were all hungry, but David was less particular about his food than I was. And he would go around and eat everybody's apple cores, if that gives you an idea of just how truly hungry we were. Also, it was in the winter, and you need more fuel at that time. And we lived in a big house with a high ceiling, and there was one little wall unit for heat. So we got very, very cold and hungry. We would go through, and she would service whatever she was going to service that day, and she had a little dog. And one day I was standing in line for my piece of bread with the essence of a topping, and my apple, the detested apple, and I looked down at the dog's dish, and the dog had an entire package of cream cheese in his bowl. And I'm going to have to tell you, we had I don't remember how we did this, but we had been given several cases of cream cheese. And she was still very, very careful with it. She wasn't trying to be cruel, to be fair. She was very used to being very careful. So I kept looking at the dog's dish. He had human food in it. There was no dog food in it. And I seriously wanted to push everybody out of the kitchen, push the dog out of the way, and eat the dog's food, because it was a block of beautiful cream cheese. But I didn't think that would go over very well, so I resisted that. A few other dishes that we ate were, green boiled eggs. And let me explain, they're not quite what you think. She would take a big pan, like a big pot like you would cook pasta in, and she would put a bunch of eggs in it and scramble them and mix them with a bunch of water. Seriously, yes. And then she would mix for a while, and then she would put a lid on it and let it kind of boil steam until it was green. And you could literally take a scoop of these eggs and bounce them like a rubber ball. The only thing I could equate to that is, for anyone that's my age or older that went to a school, maybe at least in Texas, when we went to a school in Texas, they had, for a long time before they realized this was not a bright thing to do, they had loaves of bread white bread on the tables, and the kids used to take it, we didn't eat it, and smash it up into balls and bounce it and throw it around to each other. Well, that's what you did with the eggs because you didn't really want to eat them. So this went on for quite some time, and it was very difficult for me. It was difficult for everybody, but I think it was more difficult for me because I came from a mom that was such a good cook. And one day they all went on a trip, and I don't remember where everybody went and how we managed to stay home, but David, myself, Floyd Houtman, was there anybody else?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think there was a couple of other people, but we all stayed at the house in Herring. And we realized golden opportunity, food. Now, David's parents gave him some money. My parents gave me some money. So we went down to the store and we went food nuts. Yes. We got spaghetti and garlic bread and pasta sauce and you name it. We came home and we cooked and pigged out. And Floyd Houtman was really funny. I guess it's because he was where he was from, but he called every sauce gravy. And so, yes, he was from New Bedford. And maybe that's a New Bedford thing. Maybe that was a family thing. I'm not sure. But he called every sauce gravy. And he said, oh, gravy. He was always hoping for gravy and always very disappointed when there wasn't any.
I used to joke that he used to like to have gravy on his gravy. That was a good one.
There was an old cartoon. What was that? Chowhound. Where the dog, was it a cat or a little dog? It's been so long.
It was a dog that wanted meat.
It was a dog that wanted meat.
But he says, what?
And he would, and it was supposed to bring the gravy, and then his little, it scared to death, bring him meat. What? No gravy? And he'd bonk him. So, that's, now, Floyd didn't do any bonking, but man, all you had to do was serve that man a little sauce, and he was very, very happy. So, we pigged out. Now, nobody was happy when they came home and figured out what we had done, but we didn't really get into trouble about it either. And even if we had, we didn't care because it was good and we were full and we were happy. Now, I had a tendency to follow the cook around and try to help her improve her cooking. And you think, well, that's a little strange at 15. I have always been interested in food. I was the child of the 7 of us. I was the child that stayed with my mother in the kitchen. I loved to follow her around. I loved to watch her cook. I loved to ask her questions about why she did things. And it must have been my one true, really natural talent because cooking was just easy for me. It was never hard. It was never something that I went in there and I don't know what I'm doing. And so I was just constantly trying to get her to, well, if you would do it this way, it would be better. She was very polite. She was very nice to me, but I think there was a few times she wanted to bonk me on the head. Anyway, so you could get an idea of where we were at. Now, when we lost the house on Herring, we moved to Mejia, Texas. And I believe they were into getting the land in
right. They were temporarily at Mejia.
They were working on the land in Palestine, but we had to temporarily stay. Now, I believe that was an old church property, wasn't it?
It was a church property / kind of resort area with a kitchen.
Yeah, so we stayed in a long building, and it was very strange. Some of the walls had holes in it. We'll get into that story another day because that's a funny story, living in that building. But we also had a building that had a full kitchen in it. It was a small kitchen area, but turns out that was going to be the last time we had a real kitchen for a very long time. So the woman that had been doing the cooking continued. I don't know exactly what happened, but one day Vernon, I'm going to call him Vernon because that's how I knew him. But just so you know, Vernon, David Koresh.
Yeah, they know.
Yeah, I can't call him David. If I called him anything, it would be Koresh. I don't want to say David.
I'm David.
I mean, he's David. No. So anyway, Vernon finally could not take this member's cooking anymore. And I don't remember exactly because I got informed of this kind of after the fact. But I kind of got the feeling that she basically suggested me because I had been driving her crazy in the kitchen. So I got put in the kitchen just before we moved out of Mejia, actually. I think I only cooked in the Mejia kitchen maybe...
You mean the herring kitchen?
No, the Mejia kitchen.
Oh, okay.
2 or 3 times.
Oh.
And, I mean, it couldn't have been more than 3 days that we were there because then we moved immediately to Palestine. And when we bought the property in Palestine, it was fairly large, and we had 2 separate camps. We had our initial camp, which was just off of the main road, and it was put together pretty hastily. That's where David had set up a little area for me to sleep in. And it was kind of a lean-to for the kitchen. We had 2 walls, a roof, and a serving area in the front. There was no back, and of course the floor was dirt. And we did not have a real huge setup. They had put some shelves, some rudimentary shelves inside of the lean-to for the kitchen, but it didn't have a stove or anything like that yet. We had a bonfire, which you can legally have on private property out in rural Texas. So we had a big bonfire, and someone had thought to put old oven grates over the fire area, and I was able to put big pots there. I was able to cook flat bread and different things like that. We were going through a particularly poor time, I think probably as a group, because they had just gotten the property and we had to move twice. And for whatever reason, when I got there and I went into the kitchen, I was like, there's not a lot of food here. And I had really interesting items. I don't know where we got these, but I had cans and cans of V8, tomato juice.
I remember that. Yeah.
Apple juice, pineapple juice, grape juice. I had mysteriously big bags.
Oatmeal.
Oh yes, lots of oatmeal. Lots of flour. Big bags of large, really wide, long flaked coconut. The kind that is almost like eating wood chips. And I had bags of vitamin C crystals. And yes, I had to cook with those. So we started celebrating second Passover. Vernon could not get enough of Passover. Now, if you think of Passover in the traditional Jewish sense, throw that out.
This is Branch-Davidian Passover.
This is Branch-Davidian Passover, and it's really sad because I have seen the way it's traditionally held, and it's a beautiful ceremony. It's absolutely beautiful, but we did not do it that way. It was more about deprivation than anything else. So it changed from year to year, and the list of what we could not eat, we could not use to wash our bodies with, we could not use to brush our teeth with. It just went on, and that list grew and grew every single year. So it's impossible for me to tell you from year to year what we could and could not have, because it all blurs together for me. But I mean, of course, the one thing is we didn't have leavened bread. We didn't have anything leavened. Now, quickly, I'll go over some of the basic rules we had to follow year round that were not just for Passover. We ate bread with yeast in it, but it had to be made the day before, because Vernon's understanding was that yeast stayed alive and you had to let it sit to die. And I kept explaining to him that the whole reason yeast is hard to deal with is because if you get it too hot too fast, it dies and your bread won't raise. I also said once you bake it, it dies. If it didn't die when it was being baked, it would continue to rise. That's why it stops. But he couldn't handle that. And so I had to make all bread the day before we ate it. And I'll get into how I dealt with that. We were not allowed to eat orange cheese, even if it was beta carotene, aka carrot juice or carrot peel. It had to be white cheese. So we ate a lot of Monterey Jack cheese. I think that was the cheapest at the time. We were not allowed anything with sugar or other sweeteners other than honey. And let me tell you, after 5 years of eating honey, it took a long time for me to ever want to see honey again. I now enjoy it on occasion, but for a while there I was like, nope, yeah. It's very hard to convert recipes that call for a dry sweetener and convert it to honey. But we did. So if I made biscuits, it had to have yeast in it. It could not have baking soda or baking powder. If I made a cake, I leavened it and raised it with whipped egg whites. I did that with cake, muffins, cornbread, that type of thing. So the beginning, we were going through Passover. We didn't have a lot of foods. We ate a lot of soups and flatbread. And we ate a lot of oatmeal. Now, oatmeal, first of all, we didn't have a lot of honey at the time. And it was too expensive to hand out to everybody to go with their oatmeal. And we were eating quite a bit of oatmeal because it's just what we had. So I got the idea to cook the oatmeal with the big, huge cans of apple juice we had.
And it worked.
And it worked. It made the apple juice taste the apple juice and the oatmeal taste a whole lot better. It was naturally sweetened. It had a little bit of an apple flavor. We ate that pretty much every day. We didn't have a lot of eggs or anything like that at the time. So pretty much every morning was oatmeal, and then every lunch and dinner was soup and flatbread. Flatbread was eaten with every single meal. And by flatbread, I would take a massive, like restaurant size mixing bowl, and I would put flour, salt, water, and oil in it. And I would turn that into a dough, and then I would pull it apart, roll out rounds, and cook them over an open fire. I did this every day, all day long. And when I say all day long, we were having our meetings by the fire. So literally, while Vernon was given his sermons every day, I was right there beside everybody, but I was rolling out and cooking flatbread. I did this for a while, and then I thought, what if I rolled it out and gave it to everybody and they cooked their own? Then I thought, what if I just gave out balls of dough to everybody? They flattened their own and they cooked their own. That helped tremendously, but for a couple of weeks, I did all of it. And it was very challenging. We had some very interesting soups. When I say soups, you're going to think of nice, delicious things like potato soup and even onion soup, vegetables, because remember, we were vegetarian. But no, these soups were different. I'll start out with the best and go to that's not soup, but desperation. So I started out, I had big cans of garbanzo beans. So I would take water and cans of V8 juice, and I would put a bit of pot, and I would put the garbanzo beans in, and I had a little bit of pasta, and I put some seasonings in it. That was great. That actually worked out pretty good. Well, then I ran out of the garbanzo beans, and I ran out of the pasta, and I didn't have anything but oatmeal, and I don't know, maybe putting the oatmeal in the soup would have been a good idea, but I didn't think about that. So I had peanuts. For some reason, I had a lot of peanuts. And we got to where we were eating hot V8 juice with peanuts in it. Yes. Yeah. I got a few onions, and so a few times we had V8 juice and peanuts and onions. Yeah. Whatever we could get at the time. And then it got to where there was really not much left of anything. I got to where I had some peanuts left. I had coconut. I had fruit juices. And I had vitamin C crystals. And I don't think the vitamin C crystals were my idea to put in this soup, as it were. I think it was Perry's who
Somebody thought it was going to keep us from getting
yeah,
sick.
they thought it was going to keep us from getting sick. So I got down to, I said, look, I went to them and I said, look, I don't have any real food to feed anybody. And I didn't even have, I don't think, very much oatmeal left at the time. And so I literally took all the juices I had, mixed them together. It was, like I said, pineapple, grape. I think there was some orange. I just took all apple juice and I put it all together, and I put the few peanuts I had in it. I put the flaked coconut in it. I put the vitamin C crystals, and I heated it up and we ate it with flatbread. Yeah, because this was just a very difficult time, and I didn't have I didn't have resources, so I never was able to go shopping for what I was going to cook. That was Perry Jones's job. He shopped, and I made do with whatever he had. So that went on, and then we started where it was cool, spring of '85, and it was cool, but it got hot. And then who wanted to eat hot soups and hot oatmeal? And a lot of people just ate the flatbread. But we made do. We did that for a little while, and then we moved to the other side of camp, which was down a long easement, and it was much bigger. And they built me a slightly larger lean-to. And they hooked up shortly after that, they got some large old stove and oven and hooked it up to a small propane tank. Now, I never had refrigeration, but I finally had a real oven and a stove top, and it opened up a lot of possibilities. Now, I didn't learn how to make biscuits on the fire. I learned how to do all those things, but it was glorious to have. It was glorious to have an oven. And we slowly got more money, and we were able to eat a lot more variety. I would get lots and lots of eggs. And you're going to say, you ate eggs that weren't refrigerated? Yes, we did. I don't, in other countries that probably wouldn't have been a big deal. Here in America, where they wash them, technically they need to be refrigerated immediately, and you're not supposed to eat them. But all I can tell you is none of us ever got sick. And so he would bring me dozens and dozens of eggs, and I would use them in the cooking, and I would fry them. I took great pride in serving meals that I would want to eat. I never served anything that I was not willing to eat myself. And I think that's important because, that was not held by a lot of the cooks in the kitchen after me.
And she would be the last one to eat, to make sure everyone else ate before she did.
Yeah. I never ran out of food. and I always served on time. Breakfast was strictly at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I served at 6 o'clock every morning. Lunch was supposed to be noon, and I served at noon. And then he wanted to eat at 6 in the evening, and I served at 6 in the evening. I take a great pride in this because I was 16 years old, and when I first started out in the kitchen, I was by myself. When we moved to the other side, they gave me a helper. And
say it was Karen.
Yeah, poor Karen Doyle. She was only 14, and it was very hard for her. I think it was not as hard for me because it kept me busy. It kept me doing something I loved. I was only 16, and we had to get up very early in the morning. When I say early, to serve at 6 and to serve that many people, we never got up later than 4 o'clock in the morning. And oftentimes, I was in the kitchen until midnight. So it was a lot of work, but I have to tell you that when I was out of it, I missed it because it kept me busy. It was something I really enjoyed. People liked my cooking, so it gave me some self-confidence, But anyway, I got her as a helper, and she did what I told her to do because she didn't know how to cook at the time or anything like that. And she would get angry and throw things sometimes, and I can't blame her. I mean, like I said, she was so young, and she was so tired. And she didn't have the zeal for cooking that I did, but we managed between the two of us, a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, to feed the camp 3 meals a day, every day for months. And then the younger women would come in and do the cleaning. They had a separate washing area, which we'll get into a whole nother day. But because I had massive pots and frying pans and everything, so I made fried eggs for people. I made scrambled eggs for people. I made pancakes, leavened with raised with the egg whites. I made pasta. Whenever I got cheese, it was a delight, and Perry loved it when I made lasagna. So things like that, where we had lasagna or anything with cheese, was a big treat. We ate a lot of salads. I cooked, mostly just regular food. It was vegetarian. It often didn't have a lot of dairy in it because we didn't have a refrigerator, so when we got dairy, you used it right away. So that was a treat. But that we had a big cowbell. I rang it every day, and when meals were ready, and we didn't have a group area for everybody to eat. So we would ring the cowbell and have the serving area in the front, and slowly people would come and get their meals. It was slower in the morning because I was waking people up. Because can you imagine, not everybody's a morning person. I am not a morning person, by the way. Never have been, never will be. I was a little kid and I hated morning. But anyway, they would come either individually or they would come with a big tray with dishes and I would fill it all up for the family, and everybody would go off and eat on their own. Now that changed later. We all had to eat together. They built tables, and there was no more taking food back to your current residence, which was, we hadn't built the plywood shacks yet, so people lived in tents or gutted out school buses, and that is all everybody had. I think David and then my sister and I were the only ones living in tents at the time. I think everybody else had school buses.
Maybe, yeah.
I believe so. And now on another day, I'll come in and guest star, and I'll tell you what it was like, particularly for a teenage girl, and David will pop in and tell his story, of what it was like to live in tents in a summer and a winter, what it was like to live in a plywood shack, what it was like to have a baby in diapers, what it was like when things flooded. We'll talk about how we dealt with no electricity, no running water, how we used the restroom.
No. No phone, no lights, no motor car.
Yeah, what it was
We
like.
got a motor car. No phone,
What
no
it was
lights.
like to dispose of said bathroom, and we'll get into the fun of that. It was particularly interesting for me because I did literally, unless I was in a meeting, I was in the kitchen all day. So we'll get into that another time. If I missed anything, didn't answer any questions, you have anything you want to let me know in the comments below, and I'll be sure to pop on and answer you. Thank you for listening.